So let us understand client-server model. This model is the most popular model that is used by the computers on the internet to communicate with one another. And almost every application and every website that you use uses client-server model. Now, why is that so? Why is this model so popular? I'll answer that later. First, let's understand what is this client-server model. So in client-server model, there is a client and a server. The client sends a request for service to the server. Services such as sharing data or sharing resources or performing computation, etc. So the client sends a request for service to the server, and the server waits for the request to arrive from the client, and then when the server receives the request, it processes the request, performs some tasks behind the scenes, and sends the response to the client. This is client-server model in a nutshell. And this is exactly what happens when you type a URL in a browser and hit enter. So suppose you type google.com in your browser and hit enter. Your browser sends a request to a Google's server, and then the server responds with an HTML page. Well, of course, not just an HTML page. It returns, you can say, the components of web pages like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and media files sometimes. Okay, so typing a URL in the browser and getting an HTML page in the response is also an example of client-server model. Okay, and by the way, both the client and the server can reside on the same machine, because client and server are essentially two processes communicating with one another. Okay, so when you type google.com in your browser, which is an application, sends a request to a Google's server. And similarly, there will be a server application running on a machine owned by Google that will send you the response. So machines do not communicate. The processes inside the machines communicate with each other. So because the client and the server are actually two processes, they can even run on the same machine. Okay? But the bottom line is that in a client-server model, the client machine or process sends the request for some service, and the server machine or process provides the service to the client. Okay?